Growing up in the mid-2000s was a great time. Great games were being made every day, as well as mods for said games. Whether it was San Andreas Bigfoot mods or CS 1.6 Funk_Vehicle maps, content was being made every day by players. However, there was one company that gave players the tools to create what they wanted to play. In 2004, Valve released Half-Life 2, which, much like Half-Life before it, gave players the tools to the editor, named the Hammer Editor. This allowed the player to take assets from the games, and without needing to recode a majority of the game itself, could use the games as a base to build something unique off of them. We saw an influx of Half-Life and Counter-Strike source maps because of this, but nobody would foresee the influence that this would have throughout the source community. This was the rise of source mods. To put it simply, in case you don't know, source mods are, well, they're modifications, made through the Hammer Editor to modify source games to do basically whatever you want, as long as the game's SDK and engine allow it to happen. From this, you had an influx of amazingly creative mods pop up in the mid and late 2000s, both single player and multiplayer, which made up a majority of any source player's life, from zombie games to action games, to some games even inspiring other games down the line, like Insurgency. Source mods are rooted in a lot of people's lives, so I decided to make a tier list of all the source mods that I've played over the years, with a couple of rules towards this tier list. Those being that the mods must be free. Sorry, I and Dino D-Day. Maybe one day. That you must need Half-Life 2 to be able to play these mods. Some mods have gone away from the standalone of using Half-Life 2 assets that you would need to play these games, such as Neo Tokyo. And while they are great mods, nothing in the mid-2000s made you feel poorer than a game telling you that you needed a Half-Life 2 to run it. The third rule is simply that it must run on the source engine made by Valve. This is an obvious one, but there are source mods that use assets but run on other engines, such as Unity or Unreal. And the final rule is that, of course, I must have played it. I've played a lot of source mods, but some I haven't, and others I've incidentally forgot the name of. However, there is still a lot on this list to cover. The rules regarding this tier list are also pretty simple. The games will be ranked on gameplay loop. How fun is the game to play over and over again? Does it ever really get stale? What content is there? Either player or dev made. The player base. Because all of these games are multiplayer, they're made to be played with people. So how prevalent is the player base that a new player can just jump in and play? And finally, default server availability. Because while everybody likes Dark RP, nobody likes it when the entire server list is dominated by it. So how easy is it to find a baseline server that won't install random Russian viruses onto my PC through FastDL? Keep in mind also that just because the game is dead doesn't mean a bad ranking automatically. A lot of these games are dead, but that doesn't mean they're bad or unfun to play when they do get populated. Without a further ado, the first one up on our list is The Hidden Source, a very well-known mod. The premise is very simple. 8 people are sent in to kill a crazy experimental guy with a knife, so basically just your average city in Florida, supporting up to 9 players, where one is picked at random to be The Hidden. All rights reserved. The Hidden is equipped with a knife and grenades. However, he's cloaked to near perfect invisibility and can jump around very fast and stick to walls. He has a special ability called the Pig Stick, which basically allows you to right-click to kill any player instantly on a cooldown, though it's a very divisive move throughout the game, and some servers have even disabled pig sticking entirely. The Hidden is a very fun mod, especially if you can get a group of friends to scream at each other while playing. While the maps don't really favor the Hidden too well, it's still very tense when playing as the people hunting the Hidden named Iris. The Hidden is cloaked almost perfectly, and watching your fellow Iris members get gibbed in front of you will send you into a panic frenzy of spraying down a hallway. The Iris members get offset with various add-ons such as flashlights, night vision goggles, laser sights, and adrenaline shots. Though, if I'm being honest, only the motion detector is really useful. But Iris members have strength in numbers, so sticking together is usually going to be your best option. The Hidden is insanely fun and can be scary as hell. While some of the maps are totally one-sided towards Iris due to the Hidden basically dying in close quarters when he can't escape, the Hidden is still a classically fun game. It really shows what can be done when you have the assets and knowledge at your fingertips. The game does occasionally get players playing. I've even found some full servers myself sometimes. It really all just depends on the time of the day. For that, the Hidden gets a B tier. Next up is Fistful of Frags, a rootin' tootin' cowboy shooting game. Fistful of Frags is a chaotic, fun, classic arena shooter. This game has a ton of classes and weapon variety alongside different game modes. The maps are also pretty decently well made, but can also be confusing at the same time to navigate if you're a new player and don't really know where you're going. Some of the weapons might also feel strange or downright bad to use if you don't understand how the damage system or even the accuracy system in this game works. You have a star system that allows you to buy certain perks, guns, and various other things like dynamite when you spawn in, sort of like a class system, with a bunch of fun and useful perks. It's insanely fun, well made, and it's still even being updated. The servers have a great but small community around them, although you won't find all the game modes the game has to offer unless you get lucky on the time of the day or when certain servers are being hosted. Otherwise, it's mostly just stock TDM. However, the fact that this game still gets active updates, it's free, it's well made, and it's still pretty well populated gives it a solid A tier. Dystopia is like if Cyberpunk met Half-Life 2, complete with more neon than Vegas, a more metal and Iron Maiden concert. It mixes its darker themes flawlessly, and it's one of the first source mods ever created, all the way back in 2005. Basically, being the earliest form of TF2, it has 3 classes you can choose from and 2 teams you can play as, punks versus corpos. The gist of the maps are pretty simple. One team defends while the other pushes and does objectives. Both sides have objectives to do and fight over, even in the same map. For instance, punks might have to blow something up, and the next objective, the corpos, have to hack into a panel and defend it from the punks. There's so many things you can combine in this game, from just the classes being light to heavy, with weapons and attachments you can choose. The weapons are very simple, but the game opens itself up to the modifications that you can put on your classes, such as allowing you to sprint faster or jump across the map. The lighter classes get less money to spend on things than the heavier classes, which allows it to be balanced out. The weapons are your basic SMGs, miniguns, and railguns, but I found myself enjoying the railgun in this game a lot. Mainly because I'm bad and can't get any kills without one-shotting people from across the map. Dystopia is still semi-alive, actually. The game just got an update as of 2023. However, depending on the time of day, you can find servers with between 7 to 12 people to play on. And I highly recommend you do. Though, the game does have a bit of a learning curve to learn what the hell you're even doing. Its high-paced action keeps you entertained, and also in the game, even if you don't know what the hell you're doing half the time. The community is also insane. You'll find people bunny hopping at Mach 10 across the maps and launching themselves from spawn at 1,000 miles an hour. It's pretty amazing to watch. The devs are also pretty receptive, and you can even play with them as they host community game nights, which are very fun. If you get the chance, I recommend joining their Discord and playing. Solid A tier. Fortress Forever is a pretty simple premise. What if we took TF Classic and put it into Source? And it works pretty well. It's basically just the same game with more quality of life changes such as auto bunny hop enabled. It's a very fun game. And if you've played TF Classic or even TF2, there's really not much to say about this. It has a lot of game modes to play and has all the 9 classes that TFC and TF2 has. Well, 10 if you count the civilian. And if you don't enjoy how the original Team Fortress Classic plays, then I can definitely recommend this one if you want a boost of nostalgia. I had fun playing this game when it was alive. I remember when it was the new hotness. It was an amazing time to see people getting into what is essentially Team Fortress Classic on the Source engine. Unfortunately, not much of a player base now, but it's still very fun and holds up. B tier. Dip Rip. Or Die in Pain, Rest in Peace is a car game. No, really, it's a post-apocalyptic car game where you fight another team and armored post-apocalyptic cars are on the map. This game is actually insanely unique, and I think its uniqueness sets it apart from other games on this list. It reminds me of Burnout or other old racing games. The cars control a little weirdly, but you get used to them. The combat's also pretty fun. You get an assortment of power-up weapons like mortars and rockets and ammo around the map. There's only 2 game modes. One is an objective game mode that consists of taking something somewhere while the enemy defends. The second is more of a classic DM mode. Now, this game wasn't super dead to the point where 5 players playing at once is considered alive, then it'd be way better. It's a labor of love and a very unique experience that I recommend if you have someone who can host a server or you have a group of friends to play with. It has destructive environments which are pretty detailed for the Source engine. Solid C tier. It's not bad, but it is very dead. Pirates, Vikings, and Knights answers one question. Who would win if Pirates, Vikings, and Knights fought? The answer? Well, whichever one's coolest and whichever one you want to play as. Each team gets 3 to 4 classes, ranging from light to heavy to range focused. Most of the combat boils down to mashing left click and hoping through Source spaghetti that your weapon actually hits its target. The games are usually just one big TDM arena brawl, which leads to very fun chaotic moments. The maps are also very vibrant and are focused on each team, from winter maps based on Nordic houses for the Vikings to giant castles and medieval sculptures for the Knights to beaches and tropical locations for the Pirates. The game does great at balancing its own themes, and still gets updates, although not very frequently. The game is still well played, although some servers are also spoofing players, so you're gonna have to shop around a little bit to find any with real people on them. Solid B tier. Brainbread 2 is What If No More Room in Hell met Zombie Panic. It has co-op focused missions and more PvP focused missions as well. It has some fun mechanics and doesn't really take itself too seriously. For what it offers, it's very fun, but it can also be off-putting for new players and plays almost like a discount version of Zombie Panic at times. The game is still being updated and can get populated servers depending on the time of day. Although it may not be the most unique game, it is certainly very fun. My only real gripe is some of the map objectives, and just the maps in general aren't really too laid out too well. The game overall feels a little bit off and strange, and it can be confusing for new players even coming into it. Some of the servers aren't too populated either, and some of them are even ping spoofing, which means that you might get yelled at in Spanish if you accidentally join the wrong server. What Brainbread does well, unfortunately, a lot of games on this list also do a bit better, but it's still a solid C tier. No More Room in Hell is like Brainbread, except a lot more fleshed out, harder, and way more fun as a result. The premise is simple. You're in a town, city, or lab overrun with zombies. Supplies are scarce, and by scarce, I mean a majority of these maps are going to have you punching the zombies. Ammo is limited and guns are few, so make your shots count. It is a very fun co-op game, mainly because of how hard and brutal it can be on some of the maps. Seriously, 8 people versus a horde of zombies, and while they move slow, one person dying can be hellish to survive the rest of the map. Oh yeah, did I mention that this game is child zombies? Because it does. The maps are very fun to play, and the custom maps only add to the game's quality even further. There's servers with people playing at most times of the day, but it can be dead certain times late at night as well, depending on what time zone you're playing on. Overall, a very good source mod to check out if you're in the mood for some co-op surviving, while also yelling at your friends for missing an obvious objective. B tier. Insurgency, Modern Infantry Combat. It really does hold a special place in my heart. Looking back, it can be extremely janky, but when you're in the mood to play with others who are in the same mood, it is very fun. The maps are sprawling and open, but can also be contained and limited as well. The variety in guns and classes isn't too big, it's mostly just your M16s and AK-47s. Where I think Insurgency shines, though, is its brutal combat. One shot is enough to kill you dead. You need to be fast and think quick. The game is not friendly. You could very well be accidentally suppressing your allies down a road or suppressing your enemies without even realizing it. When people are in character and giving calls and acting like they're actually in the army, this game shines through. The maps are great, and most of the game modes range from control point to objective based. This mod is so good, in fact, that it even spawned 2 standalone sequels. The only unfortunate part is that this game is very dead. Of course, for good reason, as the 2 standalone titles do the gameplay even better than before. But if you can find people to play with, this mod is super fun and I highly recommend it. Solid A tier. Suicide Survival is a very weird game with a weird premise. You're a World War II pilot throwing books at kamikaze plants. No, really, that's the plot. It's basically extremely silly prop hunt, and the premise is surprisingly fun, along with the plants and the fact that they can taunt you with Half-Life 2 quotes. Though the maps don't really have a lot of variety, and the last videos ever made of this game come from about 8 to 14 years ago, it's safe to say that while this mod is silly, it doesn't have a lot of depth, replay value, or map variety. And even though it's great and I had amazing memories playing it, I still have to be unbiased towards what I feel this mod deserves, which is a solid D tier, but it's not even that bad. It's just really dead, and I don't even think you can play it anymore, unfortunately. Zombie Panic is like No More Room in Hell if you could also turn to the zombies. 1 or 2 players start as the zombies, and the rest of the players need to survive. It's very basic in its premise, but the maps are where this game shines. The game gets harder as more people die and become zombies and are out to kill you. The maps are excellent and objective-based. Sometimes you're in a farmhouse, scraping to get by. Other times you're in an airport and you need to fly a plane away. Or maybe next time you're in a biolab trying to find the cure for the virus. The objectives really make this game feel alive, and this game can be hard as nails, especially as more people die and become zombies. The game is chaotic fun in a 24-player server or above, and never stops being fun no matter the maps you play on, despite the fact that the gameplay loop is effectively the same every single time. My only real gripe with this game is that the player zombies can have a hard time starting out, as only about 1 to 3 of them will be picked at round start to be zombies. You almost start to pity them after a while. The humans are really good at holding the fort or moving as a unit, or the map is just unbalanced towards the zombies. The community is still alive and well, but There's only really one server actually running just the base game with the base maps. The rest are using mods, custom maps, and add-ons, and I even found a server that's trying to imitate Black Ops Zombies for some weird reason. Though some servers still get mildly populated with the base game. Solid A tier. Next up is Zombie Master. No, not that Zombie Master. This Zombie Master. Zombie Master is like Zombie Panic, except one player is controlling an RTS-based view which uses an economy to plant zombies around the map. It's very fun and a classic. Many people remember spending hours on this game. It even got redone and gets semi-frequent updates, which is also pretty nice. The community can range from alive to dead, much like the premise of the game. And while the Zombie Master role is fun, it can get grating or confusing if you have no idea what you're doing and if the map isn't really well balanced. Plus, it can be very rare that you're ever going to get chosen as the Zombie Master, so a lot of practice in that is going to have to come on your own time or with friends. But no matter what side you're on and what map you're playing, there's always fun to be had with this excellent source mod. A tier. Synergy is a weird one. It's like Obsidian Conflict, but a little bit worse in a lot of ways. It's effectively just base Half-Life 2 with multiplayer, and there's not really much to say. It's very fun, however, on a 24-player server, but it's a little bit dead. The maps are very unique and range from just base Half-Life 2 maps to the episodes to entire Half-Life 2 puzzle maps, and you'll have no problem finding a server that has at least 8 players on it throughout the day. Although, hosting one is apparently next to impossible since it's so outdated and hasn't been updated in a long time. The last time I tried, I couldn't even get it to register the source server database and put my server on the dedicated server listing game. Apparently, however, the devs are really receptive on Discord, and once a year they even host a 64-player co-op event, which I have yet to try, although I've done it on Gary's Mod with friends, and it's amazingly fun and laggy, so I can only imagine what it's like in this game. Though there are people playing it, don't expect to get a lot in a server at one time unless there's a community event going on. But it's still a B tier. Obsidian Conflict is like Synergy's older, much cooler brother. It allows for co-op through all the Half-Life 2 campaigns, while also offering an abundance of cool, unique minigame-esque maps. From betting on a fighting ring featuring Half-Life 2's enemies, to playing a freaking card game using the enemies as well. It's insane what is done with this mod. It even revives some of the cut Half-Life 2 enemies flawlessly like the Mortar Synth. Obsidian Conflict has a decent amount of custom maps as well. You won't need them because there's close to 100 unique minigames just in the base game itself to play on. It's kind of insane. Obsidian Conflict is semi-dead. You might find some players on a server, and the only real downside is that they might not want to play the same minigames you do. However, the devs are working on not only updating this game, but also porting it onto Steam for the modern times. Some people also report that you can no longer play this game. However, when I last played it 2 years ago with friends, I had no problem playing and hosting servers for them, so I don't really know what's up with that. If you can find a server with people in it, though, there's certainly fun to be had with this mod. A tier. Double Action Boogaloo is what if Max Payne met Half-Life 2, or better yet, what if the Specialist wasn't overrun with role-playing servers. It's a great action game. You leap, you dive, you roll backwards, and you shoot. It's a very fun TDM game that balances out quick action with cool action, that makes you feel like the badass you always knew you were. It takes clear inspiration from Max Payne, and if you aren't diving 24/7, you're doing something wrong. Though it's fun, the gunplay is a bit wonky and feels off at times. Almost like you should have hit that guy, but your bullets missed anyways, even if your crosshair was right on him. The kill cam can also be just a bit jarring when it suddenly likes to snap to the person who killed you. The servers are popular, but many of them are ping spoofing, unfortunately. So while you will find players, there's no guarantee they'll be in your country or you'll even get good ping playing. B tier. And that brings us to the final greatest source mod. One so good that it was made only a couple of weeks after the release of Half-Life 2. I'm talking about Half-Life 2 Deathmatch. Why is it the greatest, you ask? Simple. Because without Half-Life 2 Deathmatch, many source mods we know and love today simply couldn't have existed at the time that they did. Without going into too much detail about Source, when CSS released, it was the only multiplayer game using the Source engine. Any and all source mods would have had to use assets from only CSS, which doesn't include any of the assets, pathfindings, or things even from Half-Life 2. HL2DM was pivotal. And now, it gave the player both CSS assets and Half-Life 2 assets. So in making source mods, they could actively choose what parts of either game they wanted to modify and add. The reason why you need Half-Life 2 to run most of these mods in the first place is because of this. Even today, Half-Life 2 Deathmatch is far from dead. Usually it gets about 200 to 300 players in a day, even playing just default normal servers. which is why Half-Life 2 gets the coveted S tier. Yeah, so that's it. That's the tier list, at least for me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, whether you agree or disagree with my tier list, or any things you would have changed, or any things you would have added. Hey, thank you all for watching. If you liked, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps a lot. This is my first long format video that I was inspired to make, and I know there's source mods I missed. A lot of source mods end up broken if not given the love and care that they need, as source constantly updates and constantly decides it wants to break itself. There are so many that I wanted to include on this list that were just straight up broken, or their download links expired, or they were just never updated past like 2006 or 2007, But that just comes the passage of time with many of these games. Credit goes to all the people whose gameplay footage I use, since not all Source games are equally alive, unfortunately. Oh yeah, I also forgot that the titular Battle Royale game, Apex Legends, is also a Source mod. Easy S tier.